Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. And joining me on tonight is my co-host, my co-laborer in the vineyard, and expert investment analyst, Terrence Hollingsworth. Brother Terry, how you doing this evening?
Hey, now, how's it going? Going pretty
Can't
good.
complain. I can't complain, man. This is wrestling season. Had our meeting today with the middle school students. I'm doing a middle school wrestling program, and the high school starts tomorrow. I'm fired up, man. This is where real sports take place in the winter. Wrestling.
Well, what I know is you're probably in better shape than all of those kids.
Yeah, they'll find out tomorrow. So now I have them suckers running, and then we're gonna be doing the stairs, then we're gonna be doing wind sprints, and then we're gonna be doing burpees and mountain climbers, and then 30-second takedowns, so forth. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So what's going on, man? What's going on with you and your travels in the world of finance?
Well, it's funny. You know, we're going into Christmas, and I seen something on social media, and they said, it's okay if you don't have the money to buy a gift for someone during Christmas time.
Mm,
And that's an important conversation because we get caught in doing these things and making sure that we're buying trinkets for people or kids and stuff like this. We're not necessarily investing into their future in ways that, through setting up investment accounts, 529 plans, and things like this.
mhm.
And it's good to have Christmas presents, but then what happens at graduation,
Right,
right? And you're
right.
celebrating, but then all of a sudden now you got to get student loans and things like that, and that's counterproductive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so we need to be conscious of that. I mean, we know what's happening here in the world of finance. The truth
Hmm.
is that credit card rates are at almost an all-time high. They're
Yeah,
higher than they were pre-COVID.
yeah.
Um, the retailers, they're worried about it. Their stocks are trading down because
Hmm.
the anticipation that it won't be a awesome Christmas, and so
Right, right.
that's where we are. At the end of the
It's
day, don't stretch yourself for a depreciating asset, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And it just reminds me, like on my email, I look, you know how Kohl's they have this 30% off sale and everything like that. And then they say today is last day, just hours left. Man, I get one at least. I get one at least every week. Now it used to be like every
hmm
month and every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks. Now with the holiday season coming, it's like every week. Okay, this is the final last chance. 30% off for $10 Kohl's card. Like y'all,
Yes,
that's a sign
sir.
of where we are, man, with the retail. But I want to just piggyback on something you said. You mentioned Christmas for those who celebrate Christmas. I also think about Thanksgiving, how much money is
Yeah.
spent buying a plethora of food and turkeys and the spiced turkey from Popeyes or whatever, the grill that you could do it outside and all that good stuff and have tons of people coming over and how much money is spent on food and then that carries over into the holiday season, including Christmas, and everybody's spending, a lot of money off their credit card, or they get a Christmas bonus and
hmm
they spending that on cars and just crazy things like that. But then you get the credit card bill coming up, in January. They say, oh, well, God's going to bless me. Oh, yeah, I got taxes coming, you know.
Yep.
So you're going to run to the local Jackson, Hewitt Jackson, whatever they call it, those tax places, and get the, refund anticipation loan and spend 30 or 40% on that loan
Mm.
that you might not get. So it's like a circle, right?
Yeah, it is. There's a concept that I don't necessarily like because I think it's deceiving, but a lot of people that I'm noticing now are talking about having a money mindset and, almost as if, I even heard a preacher's wife one time say, you got to fall in love with money. Now,
Mm,
that's a whole different conversation.
yeah.
However, um, money doesn't conform to us. We have
Hmm.
to understand the rules and principles behind finance in order to benefit from it. And it's hard to do in this space when it looks like everybody else seems to be doing so much better. But
Right.
please understand what I'm going to say in love and kindness, that these Negroes ain't doing as good as you think they are, right?
Mhm.
And if you measure wealth from assets versus income, you come up with a different conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that song, Who Wants to Be Like the Joneses? Keeping Up with the
Yes,
Joneses.
sir.
I say let the Jones win because
Hmm.
we don't know what's going on inside their four walls. We think they not, with a Cadillac or Lexus or Tesla, whatever. They could be, car rich or house rich, cash poor, or don't have any investments or anything like that because all their money going
No,
into their house. You got
no,
nothing
that's
left.
exactly what's happening, right? That if you just think about the statistics of when people start investing in 401k, man, the average black person starts at 45 years old.
Mhm.
That's way too late.
Yeah.
And so we always think that we don't have enough money to do so. But you do, right? At the end of the day, you do. And on some level, you don't have any choice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what are you going to do when your body is breaking down and you're old and
Mhm.
you don't have any money to go? You don't have the physical capacity to go to work, but you still need to eat. You still need place to stay. You still having healthcare issues. So,
Right. Right. Good point. And we're going to talk about the budget aspect because our guest has been on here multiple times, Trustee Miguel Jones. And he's going to talk about the aspect of budgeting as it relates to the park district and the issues with the parks between the village of Maywood and the Maywood Park District, two different government bodies, but yet have a conflict of understanding. And he's going to dive into that from that standpoint of fiscal management and responsibility and providing safe space for our children who are seriously lacking that deficiency in recreational activities in the village of Maywood.
well, I'm going to get off, but I'll say this: I always enjoy when Trustee Jones comes on, bring on his perspective behind closed doors. I challenge him on just what the village is doing to move forward. What is the
Yeah,
vision? And so
absolutely.
um, I'm going to leave, but I will see everyone again real soon. Hey, Dr. Ratliff, before we go, how do everyone get a hold of you?
So if you want to reach out to me, you can do that by emailing me at sratliff68@yahoo.com. I'll be more than happy to speak with you about your financial needs. If you need any kind of consulting services, especially if you aspire to start your own nonprofit organization or LLC or for-profit business, or even write grants, grant proposals, I do that as well. So reach out to me and we could have a conversation. Looking forward to hearing from you. So, with that said, I want to bring in our guest, as mentioned just a moment ago, Trustee Miguel Jones, and he is no stranger to the Let's Talk Maywood podcast. So, without further ado, jump right into it to bring in Trustee Miguel Jones.
Greetings, Dr. Ratliff. How's it going?
Good, Trustee Jones. How are you this evening?
Oh, I can't complain. I can't
Yes,
complain. Having a good start to the week and happy
indeed.
to be on. I can always talk about Maywood, and I appreciate you giving me the platform to connect with not only your audience, but the Village
Mhm.
of Maywood residents and anyone that would care to listen about my opinion. I'm willing to give it.
Awesome. We love to hear the opinion for somebody who's on the inside who could provide perspective such as yourself, who's done this multiple times. So we thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to talk about things that Maywood citizens want to hear about. So let's get into it. There's been several meetings as it relates to the park district and the ownership of the park districts and who owns what and will it be transferred to the park district and just a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be untied. So can you just give us a macro level perspective before we dive into it deeper, Trustee Jones?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So macro level, what's going on is So there are approximately 11 parks in the village of Maywood. And of those 11 parks, there are some that are owned by the municipality, the village of Maywood, and there are some that are owned by the Maywood Park District. And where we are now is an effort to consolidate ownership to the Maywood Park District. That was something that the residents did a referendum on back in 2006, in terms of giving the community direction of what they wanted to see. And so, that was ultimately our goal. And so back in 2021, we connected with the Maywood Park District. When I say we, the village of Maywood and the Maywood Park District connected and landed on an agreement where over the course of 2 years, we would transfer 6 parks that the municipality owned and transfer that ownership to the park district as they were intended to be the governing body over our parks and recreations in the community. And so that's high level what we're looking to accomplish, and what we've kind of seen come up to pass over the past, let's say, a couple months is that topic and how well we've been able to do with that transfer.
Thank you for the explanation, Trustee Jones. And as we take a deeper dive into what is taking place, even going as far back as 2006, has there been a point where the park district took ownership of all 11 parks?
No. No, there's never been a point since that referendum where we were able to actually do that. And so I can't speak to once that referendum happened, well, where those other governing bodies had arrived on what kind of stopped that process. But, one of the things that and particularly our mayor wanted to do, but our board in general and the community wanted to really see, okay, what is stopping this progress, and what can we do to move forward? And so that's what we've been looking to accomplish, but that has not happened yet.
So here we are, almost 2 decades later. Okay, 17 years later, going on 18. The Maywood Park District do not own all 11 parks, as you alluded to, for whatever reasons. But here we are now in 2023. I know there's been a couple special meetings to address this matter. But in the interim, there's been a couple board members from the Maywood Park District who have resigned their positions. Brother Jeffrey Dean Harris and Sister June Price Shingles, I think her last name is, who was also the executive director of the Maywood Boys and Girls Club before they closed some years ago. So, surprising to me that this resignation took place for both. And Mr. Harris was just elected, right, with the last election cycle to the Park District, I believe, just recently.
I don't think he's newly elected. Like, I don't think he got elected in 2023. Okay. But I believe that was the 2021 race, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's been on the board for a little while.
Okay. But these two, resignations is, kind of surprising considering what's going on. But with these special board meetings, I know and the community knows that there's been a lot of back and forth going on the board level, far as you as trustees with Mayor Nathaniel Booker. Talk about that for a minute, the genesis of it, and what's been transpiring since that time.
Yeah, so I'll go back to 2021, and then I'll kind of walk to where we are now. So in 2021, we had a combined meeting where actually the Senate Majority Leader, Kimberly Lightford, was the moderator. And ultimately, we wanted to get into the weeds of what could we do to essentially get these parks under the park district so they could effectively run an effective parks and recreation program and space within the village where they'd have access to the parks. And so the agreement was as follows. We were going to transfer in 2 phases. We were going to transfer parks over the course of 2 years. And the first phase was supposed to happen in 2022. And the next phase is going to happen in 2023. And so, during the course of that, what we, there were some challenges. one challenge in particular about Connor Heights Park. So when we were looking to transfer that, we noticed that there were approximately about 11 pins at Connor Heights Park, and you have to gather all those information, and there's things that you have to do with deeds and so forth in order to effectively and legally transfer those things. So there were some administrative things that were challenging, but ultimately we were in good faith working on doing that. Aside from that, now let's fast forward a couple years later. The village, as I mentioned, in conjunction with transferring those parks, we committed up to $200,000 to help with the redevelopment of those parks, meaning that we knew that the parks are in poor condition, and the park district let it be known that they couldn't financially they didn't have the finances necessary to do have all that capital purchasing of playground equipment and beautification efforts and engineering and architectural drawings, what you would need to redevelop any real estate, whether it be land or parks or what have you. And so we said that we would contribute up to $200,000 as a match for those efforts. And so now we're in 2023 and we haven't made a whole lot of progress, and that's where we landed. And I think it came to light with these recent resignations. There were some other issues that happened in the park district where there might have been, or from what I've heard, allegedly that there were issues with healthcare benefits being paid out. There was lapse in bills being paid and another type of thing. So I think that alerted our mayor.
Yes.
He has a stronger relationship with representatives of the park district than I do. So I think he got firsthand accounts of this going on, right, and wanted to bring it to the community that essentially he no longer had faith that the agreement that we agreed to, not only was it the transfer of the parks, but we also had an IGA for the park district to manage the Masonic Hall, or also what's affectionately known as the 200 building.
Right.
And so once he, I guess, got aware and understood the gravity of, some of the issues that were happening at the park district, and because we had already, of that money that we said we'd allot in efforts to contribute to the redevelopment, we hadn't seen the fruits of that, although we had contributed those resources. I think all those moving parts is what kind of got brought ahead over the past couple months. And with his, and what he would have liked to have done was to completely turn course on us doing that, and that the parks would remain with the village. So that's kind of where we are high level now and how we got here.
Thank you for that information. And it brings me to, I know you can't really speak too much on the governing body as far as the Maywood Park District. From the village standpoint, the village board, you and your colleagues, the trustees, and Mayor Booker, I know that on October 24th, there was a heated discussion, particularly with Trustee Brandon, yourself, and Mayor Booker, and there are other comments as well. And was mentioned in the village pre-press, you stated, "I'm not surprised we're here in terms of the situation, the conflict, because there wasn't a whole lot of due diligence." And I think you kind of touched on that with the lack of clarity and the, even with transfer capital of up to 200,000 not being enough capital to lay the groundwork for the future in the Maywood Park District. Can you just kind of touch on that so it doesn't seem like you're not disagreeable, but there's just a disagreement in terms of the process?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we agreed to this, it was more so we wanted to follow through on the referendum. Now, remember, this happened in 2006. So one might wonder, well, why wouldn't something like this have already occurred if the community gave direction back in 2006? And, although I can only speculate what those other boards had seen as they, looked into this. But, what happens is when any organization, when you're merging or acquiring, different properties, there's an impact to your budget. You have to be able to, follow through on this new, on these new responsibilities. And so when I mentioned the due diligence part, we really didn't, outside of having this outline, we didn't ensure that the Park District was in the financial position to even take on these things. And so it's not surprising that if there wasn't, if we didn't verify, okay, if we're going to transfer these 3 parks to you, we understood the maintenance that it takes to upkeep the parks. We understand the type of equipment that you need, the type of staff that you need to manage it. We didn't ensure that was like those things are going to be met and that we had those benchmarks within the contract. Because ultimately what we're trying to do, because the residents don't care who owns it, they just want safe parks that are in good condition, that are well kept, that are clean, and that we can do recreational events, whether it be with the youth or just the community at large.
Right.
And so the village understood that we weren't the best. This wasn't our expertise. Municipalities, we don't really do park districts.
Right.
So we thought, okay, we should send it over to the experts. That's what the community wanted. They're in that space. That's fine. But as you're doing that, you just can't do it just because that's, that was the sentiments of the community. We're responsible to say, okay, how do we ensure that this happens effectively? And, we didn't see any paperwork or verify, those type of things. And so, when you're kind of just taking it on, and you're essentially winging it, you're going to have operational, issues. You're going to have shortcomings, to redevelop some of these parks, which are huge. If you're digging up ground and getting architectural drawings, I mean, there are thousands and thousands, there are actually hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these things. And so we were, a lot of, from what I was, presented, a lot of these efforts were going to be grant-based. And so that's great to have those things, but, that's not money in the bank.
Right.
So we were kind of selling those dreams of this, and this is going to happen. The mayor, basically, he pushed this idea, like he encouraged it and kind of pushed this idea, on the residents, or really on the board. And we fell through, we followed through on it. I think the issue is high level. When you come, with an agreement, especially when it's internal in terms of just the village of Maywood, it's normally not good. It's normally not the best approach to then land blast or, kind of talk about your own community in public about its shortcomings, because we know our shortcomings, but it doesn't give the residents insurance that we know what we're doing. Right. And, when you kind of switch gears, people want to say, well, what happened? And we can't really speak to what happened because it's not like we can go back and say, well, here's where our expectations and they weren't met. None of this stuff was drawn out, and that's really shame on us for, not, looking into that. And kind of just crossing that bridge, once we got there, and now we got here. Right. And so now we're trying to figure out what's the best thing for the residents at the end of the day. But I think it was just the imagery of it and the presentation of it. You just don't want to do, just like, we know there's issues going on at our school district, and we know there's issues going on at maybe even in our library. It's not my job to then go and say, the superintendent is, this and that, and the board, because at the end of the day, I'm representing my town. And, we have, outside of just the residents, people watch our meetings. Imagine if you're a business owner or someone that's interested in investing or moving into the town. Right. And, your elected officials, and we're supposed to be the best and brightest that the community has to offer. Right. That's their leadership style if things aren't looking good. Right. And so I think that's where a lot of the turmoil came in. We felt like there wasn't a lot of accountability being held. And we also thought that we didn't do our due diligence to figure out, okay, so how do we move forward? Right. Is it just completely, okay, let's throw this agreement away? Or do we say, okay, let's revisit, see where we're at, and can we still accomplish the end product, and that's to get safe parks in our community?
What are the next steps? I do know, according to the Village Free Press and things of that nature, the attorney, village attorney Michael Jurisic is scheduled. Maybe have already met with the new Park District attorney Adam Simon about space, particularly, I guess, at the 200 building in terms of insurance and things like that. But that's all encompassing, right? So, what are the next steps, including that part? Because that is a great space there. just speaking from experience. But what are the next steps to avoid this type of melee that happened during that special board meeting where there was the back and forth and things like that to get on one accord for the sake of the community?
Right. Well, so the next step is, we're going to see where the park district is. Actually, we're going to get that information. I would encourage the the community to go out. The Maywood Park District is actually having a special board meeting tomorrow in the evening time, and I want to encourage people to go out and ask the same questions that ultimately that we're going to ask. But where we ended at the end, where we landed at the end of that special meeting on the 24th was, we're going to give the park district a little bit of time to decide whether or not they want to take ownership of these parks. And with that, this go around, we're going to make sure that, they're in a position to actually do it as well. So we're going to nip that in the bud, and either one or two things are going to happen. They're going to take ownership over the parks. And then from there, it'll be the responsibility of that governing body and the community to decide, okay, how do we fund this? Or the village of Maywood is going to keep ownership, and then we're going to figure out, okay, so what's the next step forward in terms of improving these parks? So regardless of how we get here, I would think the residents need to determine, regardless of how we get here, whoever owns it, who's going to be responsible and committed to improving the conditions of these parks so the residents can use them safely in the community. And so, we recently we're having our budget conversations, and I brought this up as well because the mayor was advocating that the village should just keep the parks, and essentially as if we'll do it. Well, okay, if that's the plan, that's fine, but it needs to be in the budget. Otherwise, you're just talking, right? So our budget reflects our priority. And if the narrative is, well, we're going to apply for this grant and that grant, well, that's fine. And that may or may not happen. You may or may not receive it. I think that was the park district's plan as well. And so, I think we need to do our homework. What's out there, what's available. And then also, because we have purchased equipment already within that $200,000 that we, that we included in that contract to transfer the parks, it'd be about understanding, so where is this equipment, and then can we get that installed first? So I think that's the first step. What I'm hoping, Dr. Ratliff, is that I'm hoping that we still can work with the park district to get it done. I think maybe 6 parks over 2 years is ambitious. Maybe you just do one at a time. You take one, and we see how well you do with that, right? Yeah. And then they can kind of assess, what they need to do from a budget perspective. Do they need to increase the levy? Do they need to connect with business owners? Because the thing about some of these entities, usually, like from the municipality standpoint, we are funded by, of course, taxpayers, sales taxes, property taxes, et cetera. So is the park district. But some of these other entities have a large funder base, small businesses and, residents volunteer at these programs, and, they, like they support in many ways where it takes the financial burden off the park district, and so we also have to be, kind of understand what needs to be done and kind of do some homework on what other park districts are doing and that type of thing. But I did see a comment across the screen about merging. That's like a referendum type question. If the village wanted to move forward and kind of do away with the park district, communities do that. I will say, for instance, I'll use an example: District 209 or District 89. Like, those aren't just Village of Maywood, governing bodies, right? District 89, comprises of, if I'm not mistaken, definitely Maywood and Merrill's Park, maybe a little bit of Broadview as well. I have to don't quote me on that, but District 209, that's the whole entire township. And so park districts can be that way as well. If the residents don't have faith in that approach, there are instances where our park district efforts could be absolved into another community if they're interested. And there's ways in which you could do that, where you could join you could kind of get absolved into another park district, and there could be rewards to that. I just think for certain communities that's just not a good look for them. For a lot of cases, it's humbling and embarrassing that would even be a thought. Like, why can't we have our own, right? Like, why do we need to join these people's park district? Like, why can't we manage our own thing? So, there is a different schools of thoughts on it, but there are certain park districts where, if you're a member of that park district, you can go to any of these communities if you pay their fee, and you can go to, for instance, if Maywood would do them. This is completely hypothetical, but there might be a park district in, Broadview or Bellwood, and, those tax dollars could go to them, and then they would manage it, right? They'd be cutting the grass, and they'd be upkeeping the space, and then maybe Maywood residents would be allowed to, or can also go to, Bellwood or Hillside or whatever to use those facilities. And I believe other communities have taken on that. So that could be the case. But again, ultimately, again, you want to have a good product for the end user, and that's the residents. And so if we've come to a place where we feel like we can't do it, there are many options. But the other option is elections matter, right? Like, we got to get people in here that have, that have a plan and know what they're talking about, or will at least be transparent and, where we could figure it out together. But, ultimately, we're on the docket to figure it out. We'll likely know by the end of the year whether or not the park district is going to take those parks, or whether or not the village will do it. And at that point, it'll be, get parks up to par.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you saw that follow-up question by looked like Carol Sykes, as far as like how to handle that if it doesn't happen with the Maywood Park District, if they can't run a park.
So just so you all know, the park district does not roll up to the village of Maywood in terms of the governing body. It actually rolls up to the county. So what happens in those cases, like, let's just say a park district went bankrupt or was dissolved for some reason, the county would absorb those parks, and then likely they would dictate who would ultimately, kind of facilitate those park and recreation services. So it wouldn't really be a village of Maywood decision to make in terms of the park district itself and the parks that they own. That wouldn't roll up to us. Now, the parks that we own, we could ultimately not transfer them on, over, and then it would be our responsibility to get those, facilities up to par, and which I would love to do and I would love to support. But what the residents need to know is, okay, so how is this incorporated into the budget? Like, how can we guarantee that this is planned and we're going to do it? In the village, we probably would need to do the same thing I'd recommend for the park district. We need to do 1 or 2 parks at a time. Which ones are in the worst condition? You get it right, and you start to do it there. I know the residents feel like, and they do deserve for these things to happen right away, but there's a reason why they haven't happened right away in the past. Right. So my football coach would say, when we were doing conditioning, if you do it right, you do it light. If you do it wrong, you do it long. And,
that's right.
So you can do it quickly if you want, because we came to these agreements quickly. It was just one meeting. We sat down and we came up with the criteria. It took a few hours, but we did it. And business deals take it takes a lot of due diligence, because you don't want to have these type of things happen.
Right.
Where it's like, it's not working out the way we planned it. And that's where, government and leadership different from politics, because politics, you want to sell a dream, because that's what the residents want to hear. But, you have to lean on the truth. You have to lean on your expertise. Anyone that's dealt with mergers and acquisitions, that's never quick.
No,
that's never quick. Because there's so many things that you want to get right. Because it can't fall through, because usually in that case, the stockholders and the stakeholders, rather, like, they're going to guarantee that you get this right. So the residents, there are stakeholders, there are investors, and so they need to be monitoring this thing and asking the right questions and ensuring that we feel comfortable with the decisions that we're making, not just do it just so we can say that we do it and posted on social media. It needs to be something that's thorough, so it could, it's something that can be sustainable. That's important.
Very much so. Well, this is very thorough, and definitely thank you for the questions from the audience. As we close this podcast again, thank you again, Trustee Jones, for taking time from your schedule to speak with us about this very important matter in the community. Again, as always, please take a moment to share your closing thoughts with our audience as we close out this podcast, and the stage is yours.
Well, again, thank you, Dr. Ratliff, for inviting me. I really enjoy speaking on these topics. And there are a lot of moving parts. I just want to encourage everyone to know that despite some of the, things that happen at board meetings and so forth, the village is moving in the right direction. There are a lot of great things going on. And this is just one of those things that, hasn't been going hasn't met our expectations, but we're going to get there. And I can tell you, I'm going to be doing my part to ensure that the community is getting a good end product. The residents and business owners pay a lot of money, and they contribute a lot of resources to ensure that we have enough to, have, safe parks, good schools, nice streets. And so when that doesn't happen, that's a problem, and we need to be held accountable. So what I would encourage residents to do is, chime in on in some of these meetings. Ultimately, you all are the boss. We're in these seats, but ultimately, you all are the boss, and you all need to figure out what's going on. And so I would encourage you all to attend those meetings, encourage, for information to be readily available. So that means board agendas and minutes. Those things need to be available, readily available. And call these people too, email these elected officials, and you should expect to get a response. Ask them what their stance are. Ask them for clarity, because ultimately what we're supposed to do as your representatives, we're supposed to field that information and then be the voice of you. So if you feel like we're not the voice of you, make sure that you're reaching out to us, whether it be by cell phone or email or coming to the board meetings. But I would encourage you to, for every problem, my boss encourages this as well. He says, if you come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. And so I want to encourage you all to, if you were us, what would you do? Or what would you recommend? Come with that type of attitude. And that's how communities really solve problems is it's a grassroots effort. It's a leadership effort. It's people that just care. And these problems, they're not impossible to figure out. They're very much possible. So I'll just encourage residents to stay engaged. And how you stay engaged is to attend meetings, write emails, call and get to the bottom of it. You should know the information. And then lastly, wherever these parks land, you want to see it in the budget that these things are purchased or going to get done. Like, ask for proof. That's how we see change in our community. We're already seeing it, but that's how we continue to push forward. So we need to lean on you all, just like you all need to lean on us. So let's get it done.
Nice. Trustee Jones, is there any way to contact you if any residents have any questions, or just anyone in the office?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can email me. My village email is mjones@maywood-il.gov. You can also reach me on my village cell phone number. That number is area code 708-288-8604. So, if I don't, I'm pretty good at getting back to residents and business owners that are interested. But, to be honest, I actually get disappointed in how little my phone rings, to be honest with you. Because I think, residents, but to me, that shows that the residents don't see any value in engaging with us. Or they don't know that they should be engaging with us. So I want to encourage everyone. That's how you keep the conversation going, is that you're asking, you're connecting with your elected officials. We're not senators and congressmen. We're not that busy. People should be getting back to you in a day or two max and have a clear explanation of what their approach is going to be to get this resolved. And the end point is for there to be safe and up-to-date parks for our communities to live in, because Maywood, I mean, that's a lot of our of who we are, is our parks. You know, everyone has a story about, if you grew up in Maywood, you have a story about when you were at a park. That's where a lot of our childhood was at. So, you know, it's important that our kids get to experience that. And I promise we're going to figure it out. You know, the turmoil was in the presentation. You know, we have to understand that our job is to always represent the village in its best light, right? For the stakeholders, for the residents, for the people that are visiting, for our regional partners, for our neighbors. We're never supposed to embarrass the town, ever. And so that wasn't a good look. It don't matter who's right or wrong. Like, you don't put your own people on blast, right? We figure out how to move forward. If there's some issues, now there is a time to be transparent, but you always do it in a professional manner. You don't want to lead like that in fear or with kind of using that as a that's majoring in the minors. You know, we're going forward, and so we're going to figure it out, and we're going to see it through. But we need the residents' help on this one, right? You guys have to be involved. You got to know what's going on. If it don't make sense to you, then it don't make sense, right? So make it make sense to you. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to talk about it. And that's my input.
Great input as well. Very impactful what you've shared. Trustee Jones, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and insight with the residents in the village of Maywood. We hope and pray that the light will come on and everyone will work together on the board and between the two bodies to come to a solution and move forward in the best interest of the residents, our youth, and our seniors. And again, thank you for tuning in. On a somber note, I hate to end it this way, but I always want to end a positive note. But my mother passing recently, Betty Ratliff, she was the strongest person that I knew. And I'm not just saying that because she's my mom in part, but she was someone that I considered an overcomer. She was an educator, deeply involved in church to make sure that all seven of the children that she raised, me being the 6 or 7, attended worship service, whether it was at Friendship Church on the west side of Chicago, and ultimately Second Baptist Church, where Pastor Sykes was the shepherd on 13th of Madison, Second Baptist Church. Kept all of us involved, kept all of us engaged through church, through the community, volunteering, sports, you name it, we were involved. And so I just want to publicly thank my mother, Betty Lee Ratliff, for all the years that she invested in me and my siblings to make us the adults that we are today, to make me the man, the educator, the preacher, and the professional person I am today. So thank you. I love you, Mom. Rest in eternal peace. And with that said, tune in next time on our next Let's Talk Maywood on Diversity Today Media. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. And until next time we bring on the next phenomenal guest, I am your host, Dr. Reggie Ratliff. Thank you. God bless you. Be safe. Good night.